welcome back. Well, over the years, there's been indications that there's been improvements in socio-economic opportunities made available and accessible to women. But there's still a lot of room for improvement. Nigeria received a score of 63.1 out of 100 on the Women, Business and the Law Index. This score is lower than both the regional average for sub-Saharan Africa, which is 71, and global average, which is 76. 0.1 for this for 2021. Well, we have Wemisola Alonge, Senior Development Analyst, joining us now. She's with Stairs Business, joining us now to give insight to this report, what she makes of it. Hello, Wemisola. Good morning.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So give us an overview of this report, the implications, and what it means in the everyday life of women in Nigeria.
So basically, first thing I would like to point out is that the survey for the report was only carried out in Lagos. So most of what we're seeing is just mainly focused on Lagos. So it cuts across different things from mobility, and by mobility I mean like how easy it is for women to move from one place to another, and also across the different levels, socioeconomic levels. So it covers things like household restrictions, workplace situations, pay, marriage, so parenthood. So just to start with parenthood, right? It covers, so this report focuses on how easy it is for women to sort of return back to work when they become parents, how much support they're getting legally from their partners, their male partners, and things like that. And in this particular segment, Nigeria scores 0. And that's because women don't get enough paid leave from work. There's no law restricting employers from not firing their staff when they sort of go on parental leave. There's no paid leave for fathers. So there's just so many restrictions that are just preventing women from being able to perform optimally once they become parents. Another thing is in terms of pay, like there's still restrictions that prevent women from working in certain types of
industry,
employment, some certain types of industries. Sometimes they can't even work overtime or overnight. There's just so many things that just preventing people
just let me find out a bit on that, because when I saw that in the report, I was kind of interested in that. When we have this rule or restriction of women into some industry or some times of the day, is it for women's safety, or is it limiting women from growing in their careers?
So it's limiting, right? If it's safe for a man to go to work at night, then it should be safe for a woman as well. Then there should be enough, like whatever infrastructure needs to be in place that makes it safe for a man rather, should also be made available for women to thrive. So I understand that, like, I mean, it could be a security thing, they're looking out for the women, but make it such that women can sort of work at any time. So at the end of the day, the fight is really for equality. Let there be equality of choices. Let people be able to choose when to work and when not to work. So if I decide that, I'm more productive at night and this is when I choose to work, I should not be restricted because there's no law covering, providing for me to work at that time, or they're just issues around me being able. So at the end of the day, people should have choices, and whatever infrastructure has been put in place that would allow men to carry out some certain activities should also be put in place for women.
All right, and then in Lagos, there was a legislation in 2011 on sexual harassment in employment. How effective has that legislation been so far?
I mean, it's difficult to say because to know how effective it's been, we need to have a baseline and see how many sorts of reports we're getting today. But then I guess the Lagos state government, especially the gender-based violence department, has been big on sort of getting reports, especially during COVID. We saw that there are a lot of reports about like domestic violence and even just sexual violence in general against women. So there's been some progress in terms of just the awareness of it. So people knowing that they can report these things. The fact that it's a law at all, just makes it even easier for people to sort of report and expect that their issues can be followed up. And that's what the department is actually doing. They're ensuring that at every point in time, when people report, they push the situation much further so that they can ensure that the women get justice. And once one person gets justice, it opens the door for other people to get justice. And I think that's all that matters. There's still a lot of work to do. There's still fear in being able to report issues. So there's a legislation preventing people or allowing people to sort of report sexual violence or sexual discrimination. But then there's no law sort of prohibiting people from discrimination based on their gender. So it's possible that someone is being discriminated against or harassed in their workplace and they report, but then when they're dismissed as a result of their gender, there's no law sort of protecting them at that point in time. So even if the person is able to get justice, there's no guarantee that they would stay in their jobs. And that's where sort of the link is broken. So in order to ensure that women are protected, and even generally everyone is protected, we must ensure that we sort of take it a step further, ensure that even when these women get in jobs, they're not discriminated against, they don't prevent them from getting promotions or from even getting jobs at all because they're women.
So who should ensure, because we have the law already, that's, I think, is government's responsibility. So who should now ensure this enforcement and then looking at the, these areas that you have noted?
So, there's already a law preventing or sort of prohibiting or covering the sexual harassment bits, but there's no law saying that women cannot be discriminated against when they're trying to get jobs. There's no law that prevents women from being discriminated against when they will need to get some certain jobs. And women are still being prohibited from participating in certain roles. So it's very possible. So these are the loopholes that people can sort of exploit when they're trying to punish women for maybe reporting certain situations. So that is what government needs to do, ensure that there are more laws that sort of surround protecting women, especially when they need to work and the kind of jobs that they get.
All right, so closely related to that is the sexual harassment in schools. This was big on the news some time ago. We don't see it in the front burner, but does it mean it's better now? It's over now?
I wouldn't say it's over because we're just not hearing about it. The absence of war is not necessarily peace, but there's certainly a lot of, if there's infrastructure on ground for people to sort of report and seek justice, which is a great thing. So we're not going to rest and say, okay, now this issue has been solved and we can now go to bed. No, we would still need to ensure that there's enough data. We need people to sort of publish the police and just law enforcement agencies need to publish a lot of information about this. Let's know what's happening around us, and let's also ensure that at every point in time when people are reporting, there's a follow through, and then there's protection for the people who actually come to report. But I think that right now the government putting these things in place is progress, but that does not mean there's no sexual harassment in schools anymore.
Mm. So Nigeria got 50 out of 100 on pay indicator. Is there any law that ensures equality in payments, remuneration?
So in terms of pay, I think that, they haven't enacted a law that says women and men should get paid the same way. And even women don't necessarily, there's another survey that shows us that across Nigeria, although women, it's very possible for women to get into a certain role and I guess get to middle management. Not a lot of women get to board positions. Not a lot of women get to senior management positions. And that's the issue, right? And even the women who are working in certain organizations don't necessarily get the same pay or get paid the same as men. And there's no law that prohibits or prevents people from that prevents employers from treating women discriminatorily in terms of giving them the same pay. So I think that's the first step. That's even one of the reasons why Nigeria scored, or Lagos in this case, scored 50 out of 100 in this category, because there's no law that says that an employer should not pay a man more than a woman.
Or shouldn't it be based on your work? I mean, if you are employed as a reporter, for instance, whether you're male or you're female, I mean, shouldn't it be based on your experience, what you're bringing to the table?
Exactly. So it should be merit-based purely, but that's not happening. And there's no law that ensures that it's merit-based.
What is Nigeria losing, with this persistent, consistent inequality that we see in both the business space and the socio-economic space? What is Nigeria losing?
So several studies, several research papers have highlighted that employing a woman, empowering women, just makes for a much more productive population. First, even if we look at it mathematically, like Nigeria currently has an equal split in terms of population. So that means if you're not empowering half of your population, you're already working on like 2 wheels out of 4. So that's already a problem. Another thing is women are known to have like to hire more people, to have more productive roles. There's another survey by the World Bank that says that women work fewer hours, like women-owned businesses, request for fewer hours and fewer staff, yet they're more productive than the male-owned businesses. And even in some cases, when women sort of switch over to male-dominated sectors, they are a lot more productive than the males in those sectors. So there's already like some sense of women, being more productive if you put them in certain roles. And I mean, Nigeria just continuously not putting things in place to ensure that this is the case is just preventing us from being as optimal as we should. As a matter of fact, this same World Bank report, I think it's called the Profiting from Parity report. It basically tells us that Nigerian women, there's a profit gap of from like I think 7% to 52% that women sort of suffer from when they go into business. So what that basically means is that men have the chance of earning about 52% more profit than women. And that's because of certain barriers. You see situations where in the agri sector, although women make up a third of the employment or the employees or people just working in the agri sector, less than 10% of the women own actual land, which means that they cannot, they're not free. They don't have the freedom to do with their land as they please. And sometimes they have to be, regulated or just sort of restricted by certain legislation. Even this report, like I said, is just focused on Lagos. In some other parts of Nigeria, it's a lot worse. It's a lot deeper, and just women face a lot more restrictions. In businesses, even, we see that women make up a lot more micro businesses. The female-owned businesses are a lot more micro than, females just head more micro businesses than men. And that just means that they have little access to more resources. They just always, all these restrictions that just prevent them from being more productive. And if research has already said that having a more educated and more, having more gender parity means more productive economies. That means Nigeria is just cheating itself by not allowing women to be more productive and more and just giving them room to do more for the country.
All right. Just before we let you go, I mean, the talk of businesses and profits and how are women when it comes to corporate responsibility?
So first thing we need to note is, like I said, although women, I think there's been a rise in entrepreneurship by women, but then these women start small and micro businesses, which means that the kind of processes that they have, there's just restrictions. They're less financially responsible. They're less able to access finance. So, I mean, if you're not keeping your books the adequate way, you're not able to go to a bank to, get a loan. You're not able to get formal support. You're not, when the CBN, for instance, rolls out support, when they roll out some support for businesses. You can't participate just because you don't have the structure in place. So these are the things that women sort of face. And that's because they get very little support. Although there's been a rise in entrepreneurship by women, it's mostly driven by the desire to be out of poverty rather than passion for whatever it is that they're doing. And
All right.
while, people being, sorry, while the drive for entrepreneurship, I mean, it's not bad for women to sort of open businesses, but if they're not getting the adequate support, if they're not getting support in terms of, keeping their books well, having proper corporate responsibility, then they will just keep producing less and they'll just keep managing these micro businesses.
Exactly, and then it should just be a cycle. Oh, thank you so much, Bimisola Alonge, Senior Development Analyst with STES Business. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.